Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to the Bold Unstoppable Show. I am Rochel Marie Lawson, and it is my honor and pleasure to welcome you back to tonight's episode. Today, we're going to be talking about women at the forefront, key issues in the upcoming election. So it's going to be juicy, juicy, juicy. Now, women at the forefront with key issues in the upcoming election makes you stop and think, because we've never had a time in our life really where we've actually had a female that was actually a real, I want to say, bona fide candidate. I remember when Hillary Clinton was trying to get the bid for the Democratic Party, as well as maybe back in the day Geraldine Ferraro, but I'm really dating myself. Because that was quite a long time ago. But I think it's really important. So we're just coming together. We're just going to take a hard look at the stakes of this election through the lenses of the issues that directly impact women, from healthcare to economic security. We're breaking down the candidates' platforms and what they mean for the future of women's rights in America. And we know there's some murky waters being treaded and stirred up here. Also, I have a phenomenal lineup of experts ready to dive into these topics and help us understand how these politics and these policies will affect our lives moving forward as women, as a country, and as a society. So let's unpack these critical issues together. And I'm going to start by allowing the panelists to introduce themselves and tell you all a little bit about them. So let's start with Dr. Shafer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Shafer. I'm a physician, a mom, I'm a life coach, and I host Talks with Dr. Shafer. Nice to meet everyone.
Nice to meet you. Okay, Julissa.
Hi, everybody. I'm Julissa Germosen. I have spent 25 years in the technology industry. I'm a Latina, a proud immigrant, Dominicana. I have worked for companies such as Salesforce and Microsoft and high-tech, high-growth organizations. I'm the author of a book that just released this past Sunday on the first day of Hispanic Heritage Month, called Latina Madrina, Stories, Lessons, and Hard Truths from a Brown Latina in Tech. And also recently filmed a TEDx talk on the topic of the Latinx community and generational wealth and growing wealth, and the things that Latinos are currently doing to grow wealth and contribute to this great nation that we have.
Well, welcome. Julissa. Like Melissa, but okay, got you, Julissa. Yes. My apologies for messing up your name. Like any kind of sister. Okay, so Dr. Susan, tell us a little bit about you.
Hello, everybody. I am a retired neonatologist. I practiced 35 years in NICUs, mostly in Texas. I'm a huge advocate for mothers and babies. I'm a breastfeeding medicine expert and an expert in working mom burnout. I have a very popular Substack newsletter called Moms Matter, where you can subscribe for free. And I love the topic that we're looking at for this episode.
Oh, love it. So here's the panelist, and I'm just the moderator, and we're going to dive right into the very first question. So my question that I'm going to just throw out there, and whoever wants to take it first, and then we'll just dialogue, is this. What are the most pressing issues for women in this election cycle? Who wants to take that?
I'll take it.
Dr. Susan.
I think that, of course, reproductive healthcare choices are priority one. But I think that if we go below that level and talk about paid maternity leave and affordable child care, it really gets at the issues that moms are facing right now, which is the exorbitant cost of raising children and the emotional load of running a family and working full time. So those to me are issues that are just as big as reproductive health care.
Love it. Anybody else want to share any insight?
Yes, I echo what Susan, Dr. Landers mentioned. And I think, when we talk about reproductive rights, moms in the workplace, I think we need to bring in, the fathers, right? The other parent, right? The other parent in the picture, because really it's about the entire family. And so from my experience, what I have seen is that we talk about these issues as if they're just women's issues, and they're not. They're all of our issues, right? They're issues that we all need to address and talk through. I know, one of the things, just being in the corporate space for, as long as I have, there is just such a common thread around, childcare and hours, right? And so one of the things that I talk about, in my book is how this corporate landscape that we derive our careers in are not built for us, are not built for women and other marginalized groups. And so when you think about the workday, they typically are a 9-to-5 scenario, if you're lucky, generally longer, right? And you all are in the medical field, so your days are even more chaotic, frankly. But when you think about that, and then you think about the unavailability of childcare, and then when the children aren't in school, what does a typical school day look like? Generally, it's 9 to 2, 9 to 2:30, 9 to 3. So it really involves the full family. And I know, from my perspective, it's like, Dr. Landers mentioned, it's beyond reproductive rights, which are critical, important for our health. But it just grows into, these are issues that are impacting all of us, and we all need to really solve for it all together. So,
Thank you. Love it. Dr. Shafer, what about you?
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think, Julissa, to your point, I think that there's such a lightning rod around some issues and not others, even though maybe one like childcare and access to healthcare in general might affect us every single day. But then there's something that may or may not affect us, but it will affect someone we love at some point in our lives. And so it can be interesting how it gets so much attention. But I think as women, this affront on our right to healthcare in a time of crisis, when most of us think if we go, based on EMTALA laws, which is, emergency care agreements that we have, that if we go to the emergency room and we see someone like Rochel, we know they're going to take us where we need to go. If we are bleeding from a miscarriage, or we're in sepsis because we had a miscarriage and we weren't able to have that baby at home on our own, unfortunately, even though it's miscarried and now we're dying, we need to know that in that moment of crisis, we don't even have to think about whether or not it will be legal for us to get that care, whether or not our physician will have to make a judgment call as to whether or not, if they save our lives, they're going to end up facing criminal prosecution, losing their medical license. And that's just an astounding thing to consider.
It's horrible. In my state of Texas, we've already had a number of maternal deaths as a result of physicians being hesitant to provide reproductive health care after a miscarriage, or especially with a wanted pregnancy. And physicians that I talk to, obstetricians, are fearful of what the Texas legislature has set up as a penalty of 100 years in prison if you provide an abortion to a mother with no exceptions. It's just crazy. And this makes the issue of a national abortion ban, should that become a reality, a horror for women. The talk around IVF earlier this summer in the state of Alabama, where the Supreme Court of Alabama said that fetuses were persons. That's really not what most ethicists and obstetricians and pediatricians believe. And those kind of issues are at the forefront in this election and very important. Not only are they confusing the public, which state has what laws, what state Supreme Court is going to define who a person is and what kind of rights the fetus has. We have lots of important issues up for grabs in this election season.
Great conversation, ladies. I am like Dr. Shafer. You have that lady comes in, or the young gal that was brutally raped, and now she's spontaneously aborting a baby. And if we don't get that baby out of her, she will potentially have sepsis and die, right? I think in the context of what we hear on the news, no one ever talks about that. No one ever talks about having to take care, and as a healthcare provider, having to take care of a young lady that's been brutally raped and now is impregnated. She doesn't want that baby, and maybe she does, but for the most part, it's a very traumatizing experience and something to go through. And then for the physician has to decide, do I take the baby or let it spontaneously? Well, it's not spontaneously aborted, it's stuck. What do I do? If I do something, I could be technically classified as giving an abortion to somebody. But if I don't do something, the baby and the mom could die. So it becomes really, really a fine line, which no one talks about. And in my opinion is, I really don't care if you're pro-choice or pro-life. That's not the issue. The whole issue behind it is having someone outside of us tell us what we can do with our bodies.
Right.
There's still those erectile dysfunction medications on the market for anyone 5 years old to get, who can still, maybe that one time might be the last time, but impregnate somebody. No one's talking about that. No one's addressing that. If you're going to put limitations on women's right to choose to do with their bodies, then we need to put the same limitations and hold men accountable for what they choose to do with their bodies. And so it just is just really, really sad that our country has gotten to this point where women's rights that people died for us to have are being so
and that it varies from state to state. If you're unlucky and live in a state that have abortion bans and you have to travel to another state and take off work, it is just a travesty. And the Republican candidate says it's up for the individual states to decide. That patchwork pattern is not good for women and their families. It is not the way we should function as a democratic society.
Right.
I totally agree. And I do too now reside. I'm a Golden State girl, but I do reside most of the time now in Texas. And so I'm just all over twisted about, my head spins around every time, like the exorcist, and I keep telling people, it's not, the issue is somebody telling you what you can and cannot. Next, they'll be telling you can't go outside until you got to have a male escort. You can't wear that color because it's too provoking. You can't wear red. You can't put on makeup because you're trying to attract another, I'm sounding extreme, but if we let the door open to when they can tell us what we can and how we can utilize our bodies, what we can do with it, it's not going to stop. So I'm going to jump to the next question because I obviously get passionate about it because I think us in healthcare, we've seen some of these things that come up, and before we've never had to make a decision whether it was going to affect our license or now. And now the decisions affects our license, the patients, the unborn, and how we ebb and flow as we move forward. So the next question is, okay, so with regards to the candidates and their platforms, obviously they're very different, regarding our rights and protections. What do you think is something that the candidates need to hear, but no one in the media is asking them questions, and not necessarily so much about, our right to choose to pro-life or pro-choice, but just about women and our protection?
I think paid maternity leave is huge. We're the only Western country in the world who does not have paid maternity leave for at least 4 months, and many countries have it for 6 to 8 months. We also have terrible breastfeeding rates in this country because women will start to breastfeed. 80% of new mothers breastfeed, and then they have to go back to work. And even though there are some laws that protect pumping and expressing milk in the workplace, a lot of mothers aren't aware of what those are and don't have employers who abide by them. And then they quit breastfeeding and they use formula, which they have to pay for. And so our system is set up to make mothers, new mothers who are working, who have a baby, fail. It is set up to give them maximal stress. And I think I heard Kamala Harris say something about paid maternity leave in one of her rallies. Dr. Shafer, did you hear something about this from that candidate?
You know, I didn't hear it specifically from that candidate. I live in both the States and in Europe, and it's not unusual in Europe to be given the opportunity to have even up to 3, 4, or even 5 years of maternity leave. Maybe just the first year is paid, which is reasonable. But if you want to have that time to stay home with your child and raise them until they go to preschool, you can without losing your ability to re-enter your workforce, which sounds like a long time. But for those of us that have raised children, you know, if you take that time off, it doesn't mean that you can't go back to medicine and be a competent doctor. In fact, all the things you learned from motherhood might make you an even better doctor than you were before you left medicine. That's very possibly true. I know for me, I learned so much from having my children, and I went back with my first child to work in 5 weeks. And so, yeah, there was no pay there, and that was when I was a resident, you know, and so that was through a government program. So you're not paid. There's, you know, retaliatory things that you experience to try to make up the time that you were on vacation, you know, that sort of thing. So I think these are really critical for making women truly equal in our society, making sure that not only can they have paid maternity leave that really allows them to bond with their child and just heal from that process, that traumatic birth process, but also to truly have that gender pay gap closed. There is no legitimate reason for it. And until that is fixed, we are going to have so many other problems that are popping up, and we're going to play whack-a-mole instead of just saying, no, we see this true equality. When you have the means to care for yourself and make good decisions with your healthcare, with your job, with your living situation, that changes the entire game for your health and wellness and for your entire life.
You know, very well said. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I remember when I had my kids, 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Wow. You know, and I'm dating myself because it was over 3 decades ago, but 6 weeks is what I got. And I was a breastfeeding mom. I breastfed my kids till they were 2, and a huge advocate of it. But I had to, you know, it was all, you know, you got to be prim and proper, and, you know, you didn't want to offend anybody. There's times I would breastfeed my son in the car, in the parking lot, because I didn't want to offend anybody. And so, you know, I agree, like what you said, Dr. Shafer, is like we need to expand what's available for women to be able to have those opportunities if they choose to spend with their children or go back or do a little bit of both. And particularly with remote working now, you know, it's a lot more flexible than it was in the late early 90s. But I think you both mentioned some very key things that the candidates should be talking about. We have one candidate that really talk about it. The other one, I think, is not as educated enough to be able to have a appropriate dialogue behind what we're sharing. Now, I want to jump into like the economic policies proposed and their potential impact on women, especially in the terms of employment and wage equality. Julissa, please share what your thoughts are about that.
You know, I was thinking about that as Dr. Shafer was sharing about, you know, Europe and the fact that Europe has all of these policies and protections for mothers and for fathers as well in maternity leave. And so and you were sort of pulling that thread around, you know, the lack of employment opportunities and upward mobility and the ability to be positioned for promotions. You know, in next week is Latina Equal Pay Day. So Latinas as a whole are the lowest paid gender and ethnic group of all women. We have an equal pay day for all women. We have a Latina equal pay day, an African American women equal pay day, and an indigenous equal pay day. And so, you know, when you think about that the fact that women, especially Latina women, have to work almost more than half a year more to be paid what a white non-Hispanic male is paid. So it is just part of that reason is because of the system that we have set up, from lack of maternity leave policies for both mothers and fathers, but also the institution that we see ourselves working in and not really making accommodations for parents of all types. Because quite frankly, when we create these policies, for one, we're helping all. It's not just impacting women or men, it's impacting all of us, right? Because we're all, those that choose to become parents, this will benefit us all. And we haven't even mentioned the benefit to the child and the children, right? Bonding in families. So I'm heading to Europe in a couple of weeks, and I always love going there. And when I spend time with friends and there, it's an interesting dialogue about just the differences. Many
they think we're crazy.
To put it kindly, right?
They do.
We're crazy, but everybody wants to come here and be with us crazy people. You know what's up with that? We may be crazy, but we are the trendsetters for being crazy in the world. That's
bad trends right?
On the decline.
Oh man. Okay, so let me ask you ladies this. I really like the whole employment and wage equity. I mean, I know there's several ladies that I know that are employed in companies, and they're making less than their male counterparts doing the exact same jobs. And these are big, you know, Fortune, 1,000 companies or whatever. But I think sometimes as women, we do things so easily and gracefully that it's taken that we're not working as hard or we're not as smart. So we should be paid less. And other times it's just like we should be paid equally. We should be paid more in some instances, because sometimes we have to be the mom to all these guys in the corporate world. You know what I mean? We got to play, we have to play fair, Johnny, with Michael, because you guys can't be arguing, you know, that kind of stuff. And so there's a huge disparity in employment and wage equity for sure. We've got a lot to go, but I think we've come a long way. Now I want to ask this question. Should the voters assess the candidate's commitment to addressing gender-based violence and discrimination?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Could someone?
Yeah.
I saw a clip today on social media, and a speaker asked a group of college students to please stand up if they or someone that they knew, if they felt comfortable, if they or someone they knew had been a victim of sexual violence at some point in time. Every single person stood up. And then they said, I know. And then they said, now, if you could humor me, everyone who is aware that the person or themselves that was assaulted did not report this sexual assault, please quietly sit down. And all but 3 of hundreds of individuals sat down.
Oh, that's so sad. You would think after the Me Too movement that women would feel empowered to report sexual harassment. But you know, Rochel, like you said, women are expected to be the caregivers and take on the emotional and cognitive labor of running the household. We're also expected to be subservient to men. Still, it's a cultural phenomenon. And one of the things I like about the Democratic candidate is her record is one of not being subservient to men. She's had lots of roles in male-dominated fields. The two doctors on this panel are in male-dominated fields.
And male-dominated.
Okay, same thing. And so what we have to do is try to establish our place in that culture while also talking about household and family responsibilities in a way that's respected and ask for equal pay. You know, women don't even talk about salaries the way men do. Women don't go into a job interview and say, what's the starting salary? It's awful the way we're so timid to talk about career goals and money and time off from work, when in fact, those are the things that everybody wants for themselves and their family.
Absolutely.
Oh,
I think
love it.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm not a financial advisor. I always tell people this, but in my book, of the 11 chapters, 4 are about money, because I just believe that we, as my community, the Latina community, but I think the majority of us as a whole, we don't talk enough about money. And so I wanted to provide some tools, for Latinas in corporate, in tech, to empower themselves, to really negotiate strategically and artfully and wisely with data, right? For not just, their negotiating a compensation plan for a new job, and negotiating promotions, negotiating how do you promote yourself, right? How do you promote yourself? And in many cases, that means moving to another company for higher pay and being the CEO of you in your career. So, and I talk about a lot of other things, but I just love how, Dr. Landers, you've pulled it towards, this conversation toward, money and negotiation and potentially like this society shaping us to be in that realm, but we're kind of fighting back, right? And so anytime a mentee comes to me and say, we're talking through negotiating, either a comp plan or a raise or promotion or whatever, and they, come to me, inevitably they say, well, what if they rescind the offer? And I'm like, no. You are in a power position. You have been made the offer. Now you negotiate, right? And so negotiate for the things that you want, tactfully, strategically, and but to win. So it's not going to solve all of the economic disparities that women are facing. It isn't, but one by one, people make inroads, but we all need to have that conversation about money and how to get there.
And yes, I want to piggyback on that.
I just want to dip in and say this, and then Dr. Shafer, we have to give ourselves permission. We have to give ourselves permission to get that money we want, ask for those benefits. We don't do that. Because I think sometimes as women, we feel if we do that, then they'll say, "Oh, look at that bitch. Who does she think she is?" Or I'm serious. I've been in positions where they're like, "You shouldn't be asking for that." I'm like, "Well, why not? I'm a business owner. You wouldn't tell that to the gentleman next to me that's going to ask for it and probably give him more. So yeah, I'm going to ask for what I'm worth." But a lot of times we don't feel we have the permission, so we don't ask. Or if we do ask, they may rescind the offer because now they'll put us in some kind of category. I say, ladies, ask. If they say no, there's 17 other people that'll say yes to you. So go ahead, Dr. Shafer.
Well, I think the common thread of all of these topics is what we have experienced as women, as women, as the consequences to when we do speak up. When you're talking about things like sexual violence and reform with regards to that, when you actually look at prosecution of people who have committed sexual violence. You're looking at,
Mhm.
single digits with actual prosecution. And then you're actually looking at a lot of the victims being victimized and ending up facing criminal charges themselves along the way of trying to seek justice for what happened to them at no fault of their own. And there's a clear record of that. When we talk about, as Dr. Landers was talking about in Texas, there are clear incidences where women are being criminalized and healthcare providers are being criminalized for doing things that they needed to do either to save their own life or to save their patient's life, which is their ethical and legal duty to do, truly. So when we think about that and we think about reforms for pay gaps, it all comes down to what we believe to be our perceived consequences in those arenas, but then also the true consequences that we face as women. And that's where it comes down to trying to focus and maybe try to leave the emotion that often media is bringing into this chaotic tornado of this pre-election season. Leave it alone. Don't get into it. Research. What has this candidate actually done in the past? What about people that he works with? What choices have they made? What does that mean for my life, my personal life, and how do I want to use my vote to make a difference in this upcoming election?
Right.
Oh my goodness, ladies. This is okay. Time for one more question, and we're already over time, but I don't care because this is just such a good dialogue. We're having such a good conversation here. So let me ask this last question. What role can women, let me see. What role can and should women play in influencing the political discourse during the election? What if there's one thing you could share with ladies listening from each of you, what would you share with regards to that question?
Vote
you, Dr.
and get your friends to vote. Talk about the issues. Go to church. Go to your book club. Talk about it at work. Vote, vote, vote. Take people to register.
Yeah. Take them
Get
there.
your Gen Z daughters and sons to vote.
Yes, I love it. I love it.
There are 30 million Latinos that are eligible to vote in this election. And many of those are young Gen Z Latinos. So they are just now new voters learning about the issues. So number one, register to vote. Go to votolatino.com.org and register to vote. Then learn about the issues and make your choice.
Love it. Dr. Shafer, let's close it out with you, girl.
The same. I wanted to piggyback off Dr. Landers. If you've got a babysitter, let your babysitter, rush home. Let them go vote. I can remember doing that. And my babysitter was canceling my vote. And she said, oh, my goodness, thank goodness that you rushed home from work and you knew I was canceling your vote. And I was like, yeah, but you need to vote, right? You need to use your voice. And if it's helping someone cover a shift at work and taking trades or watching kids, take your kids to the polls. Your kids need to see you vote too. They need to see the power you have as a woman and that you're participating in this very important process. Vote, vote, vote.
Right.
Oh,
We all agree.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much for the very powerful, enlightening, and wise words of wisdom, conversation and wise words of wisdom that you all shared. I think it's important that we get out and vote for sure, have dialogue. We may not always agree, but as a society, it's all about choosing the best candidate that will represent the whole country and not a segment or portion of the country. And so thank you so much. I feel so blessed to have all three of you here. It's just phenomenal. I can talk for another hour, but that's just me. And Dr. Landers is being, summoned. So with that being said, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. Right? Don't worry, subscribe to the show. We're women. That's what we do. We multitask. Subscribe to the show and share the show with everyone you love and care about. I'm Rochel Marie Lawson, the Queen of Feeling Fabulous. And this is the Bold, Unstoppable Show. Until next time, goodbye for now and go out and vote. Bye. Yes.